Hey everyone, this is Melanie and I read a book and I learned some things. The book I read was Heidi by Johanna Spyri. I read this book because I looked on my bookshelf and thought, oh, I should read that book. My grandma gave it to me when I was young and I don't remember if I ever finished it. I remember starting it and then moving on. Plus, I had my first week at a new job and I knew it was going to be laborious and I was to receive a lot of information, and I did. It was a lot. And so I figured if I don't have a lot of time or energy, why not read a simpler book that can, like, you know, help me relax, but also I'm still reading because I really want to keep reading. Heidi is a book about a Swiss girl who moves with her grandfather when her parents die, and lives with him on a mountainside, and it's beautiful. She lives with him. She spends some time in Frankfurt, Germany with a wealthier family to be a companion to a young sick girl there who's a few years older than her. And the whole book is sort of centered around little stories that show how Heidi just makes the world better for these people, honestly. I want to say this book is not the thrill that I had with, what was it, the Sword of Kaigen before it, and I think I needed that contrast. So Heidi is 100% a 2. If you haven't ever heard of the Enneagram test, the numbers range from 1 to 9, and I've tested as a 2 before. A 2 is the helper, the compassionate, empathetic one, that kind of character, but she's not the kind that, like, makes it about her. I find that sometimes if you have a wide range of emotions and a deep well of empathy, sometimes you can make it about you. She doesn't really do that. And it's really sweet, and I love it so much because she'll look at someone, see the agony in their eyes, and be like, I want them to not feel this way. I want them to be happy like I'm happy with my grandfather on the mountain. And it works. She's wonderful. More specifically, what I learned from this book, let's get into it. I love when children's authors, like authors of children's books, know children. It seems like an obvious thing, but one of my least favorite books I've ever read that I don't know why I finished it, but I did. I'm kind of glad I did because it helped me see why I hated it so much. I didn't feel like the children were the most interesting characters, and I didn't feel like he knew the children he was writing. And maybe I'll talk about that book one day, but in contrast, Heidi, she knew what children were like. It's so charming and clever, and you see the little bit of sunshine that Heidi brings to everyone. And it's just, to me, so important that if you're writing children, you should know them. You can make them a little bit more interesting than children in real life, but also children in real life say weird stuff and do weird things and speak honestly and openly, and a lot of the time, if they haven't been, like, hurt by the world yet, they usually can bring a lot of life to you and simplicity. I think it's important to note the simplicity of this book. In addition to that, I read some Goodreads reviews, and I won't say, I don't remember the name of this reviewer. Don't, like, if you want to read the comment, if you happen to watch this part of the video and think, oh, how funny, I want to read what they said, go ahead, but please don't bother this person. I never mean harm to anyone if I talk about reviews I disagree with or that I think are funny, because this one was funny to me. They said something along the lines of, I read this book, or I was supposed to read this book my senior year of high school. I read it, whatever, it allowed me to read War and Peace twice during that time, twice. Like, I think it was War and Peace, which, as far as I know, is a large book that I haven't read yet and I'll probably get to one day. I just thought this was so funny. I think one of my biggest issues is pride, 100%. I like to feel smart. Hence me making videos about things I think about books, whatever. But this review was so funny to me because they were like, as a senior in high school and I should have been reading something like War and Peace, so I did, and I read it twice, and I'm like, oh my gosh, no one cares. And they talked this book down, and I was like, why? What is the point to talking this down? It's a children's book. It's not meant to be as raw and potentially like deep as War and Peace. You know, it's simple. Heidi wants to make people's lives better. She wants to drink the goat's milk, eat cheese and bread, and do cartwheels on the mountain all day. I'm referencing the cover, aren't I? But like, what's so wrong with that? I think children's literature is so important. I could go off on this all day. I think that it's not just nostalgia either, because I didn't really remember this book when I was reading it. I vaguely had an idea of it, and I didn't love it as a kid. It was not something I was super interested in. I think that because as human beings, we grow up with little things that happen in our childhoods that greatly affect us, that what better fiction to help us deal with those things than children's fiction. And that's not always the case, but it's okay if literature written for a younger age reaches you, and it's okay if it doesn't spark your brain with brilliant ideas. Books don't really have a purpose but to be read. They don't always have to even be enjoyed. I think this book was meant to be light and happy and warm, and that is what I needed this week. If I had read War and Peace during my work week, I would have been exhausted and not in a good way. It would have brought me down. It would have made work harder. But to come home and to just read a bit of Heidi before bed, because I was worn out, was what I needed. It's like that scene in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where they say that candy doesn't have to have a point. Neither do books, you know? This doesn't need to have the point you want it to have either. Okay, you wanted to read War and Peace, wonderful. But come on, man. It's still, try to learn something from it. You know, there's always something to learn from things that you might look down on. Always, I think. Even if it's bad. Like, let's say Heidi wasn't a very good, like, well-written book. I think it's well-written for its age, the target audience, the characters themselves. She knows them well. You love the grandfather. You love Heidi. That's well-written stuff right there. And it's not huge either. You can write a bad book that has deep ideas and is trying to spark your brain, and you can learn from it. You can write a wonderful book that's not trying to do much of anything but be a nice read, and it can be way more worth it than anything else for you. Anyway, that's what I learned, because I don't just want to try to make my stories explosive and mind-blowing. I just want to make it the right story for me to write and for someone to read. I want someone to read this and be like, this is what I wanted. This is what I was looking for. Because that's why I'm writing it. Because I haven't found it anywhere else, and it's stuck in my head, and I want to express it. I don't know. Anyway, so I recommend this book as a warm read. She's like the definition of the color yellow. She's so bright and happy, but not overwhelmingly. I don't know. Just, it's nice. It's a nice read. And children's fiction, middle grade, young adult, if those are what you want to read, then read them. Because that's what books are for, to be read by people who want to read them. There's really no other way to define it, because that's entertainment for you, you know? So I recommend Heidi for those of you who just need a break, if you need to feel like a child again and relax a little bit, because it is really nice and hopeful, and there are kittens at some point. Nothing bad happens to the kittens, because good old Johanna is the best. So that is what I learned. That is my rant about children's fiction. We'll probably hear it again at some point. Thank you for watching.